Hi, thanks for listening to our sermon podcast, Second on the Mount. I'm George Anderson, minister at Second Presbyterian in Roanoke, Virginia. I do not take it for granted that people sit in the pews on Sunday morning or listen to these podcasts hoping to hear something that connects them to God, to each other, to the world. And so I spend hours seeking the right word for the right time and said in the right way. I welcome your feedback. I encourage your sharing this sermon with anyone it might benefit, and I hope you'll return to this podcast again or come visit us for worship. We'd be happy to have you.
Let us pray. Holy God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. This will be the second sermon in a row based on the book of Job. I'd call it a two-part sermon series, but this wasn't planned. Who would have guessed that on preschool Sunday, Reverend Brandon would preach on Job? Good sermon, by the way. Ben got by with it because he didn't focus on Job's misery. And though I'll talk about Job's misery, I won't focus on it either, or try not to, because my focus will be on passion. I think most of you know the basic plot of the story, but here's a quick recap. Job is a good man living a good life until it all comes apart. For seemingly no good reason, he loses his children, his possessions, his health. This past Wednesday in our Bible in black and white class, Bill Lee talked about faith showing itself as joy. Well, Job's story reminds us that it doesn't always work out that way. Job doesn't lose his faith, but he definitely loses his joy. Now, how Job's life becomes chaos is told in 2 chapters of prose. And then for 39 chapters, there come conversations, all poetry and all passionate. The conversations include Job talking to himself, Job talking to his friends, Job talking to God. And then there is this final chapter of prose that tells of calm that follows the storm. We're informed that Job and his wife are given more children and his fortune is destroyed, doubly so, in fact. I'll read from that chapter. Then Job answered the Lord, I know that you can do all things, and that no purpose of yours will be thwarted. Who is this that hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore I have uttered what I did not understand, things too wonderful for me, which I did not know. Hear, and I will speak. I will question you, and you declare to me. I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eyes see you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes. And the Lord restored the fortunes of Job when he had prayed for his friends. And the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Then there came to him all his brothers and sisters and all who had known him before, and they ate bread with him in his house. They showed him sympathy. They comforted him for all the evil that the Lord had brought upon him. And each of them gave him a piece of money and a gold ring. The Lord blessed the latter days of Job more than his beginning, and he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 donkeys. He also had 7 sons and 3 daughters. He named the first Jemima, the second Keziah, and the third Karen-Happuch. In all the land there was no women so beautiful as Job's daughters, and their father gave them an inheritance along with their brothers. After this, Job lived 140 years and saw his children and his children's children 4 generations. And Job died old and full of days. The word of the Lord. Passion is often praised, and often rightly so. We've been told that it's not good to repress one's feelings. Now, that is not always true, but there is truth to it. It is not helpful or healthy to completely suppress your feelings. Bottled up feelings can lead to anxiety, stress, even problems with one's physical health. I mean, just this morning, I heard on the news a report that the incidence of irritable bowel syndrome go up right before elections. Makes sense. There's some dishonesty, too, that comes with repressed feelings when family and friends don't know where you stand on things, don't know how you feel, made worse when they have to bear the brunt of passive-aggressive behavior or terrible outbursts when the capped volcano suddenly explodes. Passions are strong human emotions, and they can play a positive role. Commitment keeps a marriage going, but many marriages begin when two people are strongly attracted to each other. Oh, let's just go ahead and express it in a passionate way and say that they fall madly in love. And great artists, dancers, painters, actors, writers get to be great because they're passionate about their art. People who are passionate about justice are the ones who confront injustice. And passion can be a powerful experience in prayer and worship. I don't need to keep giving examples, do I? Passion has its value. It has its place. But there's also something true to the expression blinded by passion. I mean, just this past week, I heard these 3 stories on social media and podcasts. I heard a divorcee talk about how she married a toxic and unfaithful man and explain why she did it in the first place. She said, I was so passionate about him that even his flaws made me fall more in love with him. I heard Tom Brady tell of speaking in a friendly way to the fearsome defensive tackle on the other team, Ndamukong Suh, but he's hoping to get on his good side so that this fearsome tackle wouldn't hit him quite so hard. And Suh snapped back, don't be talking to me like I'm your friend. We ain't going to be friends. Suh's passion was hitting quarterbacks, and he didn't want to see Tom Brady as anything but a guy to be hit. And I heard an inmate talk about how his life turned from being a college student on a football scholarship to serving a life sentence without parole, all because of one fit of rage that led to another's death. Passion's power is that it can focus an emotion. Its danger is that it can be blind. The passionate poetry of Job illustrates what I mean. The poetry of the Conversations is an example of powerfully focused emotions. Before Job's life descends into chaos, he and his friends, they share a passion. It's a passion for a way of looking at life. It's a passion for a theology, a certain way of seeing the world and God's role in it. For the sake of the sermon, I'm going to be overly simplistic and say that their theology was a sort of prosperity gospel theology. This idea that we have this bargain with God. You're into the bargain? Worship God, follow God's law, be a good person. God's into the bargain, you'll be blessed. Don't keep your end of the bargain, well, that's when bad things happen. So let's get to the conversation that Job has with his friends, Bildad, Zophar, and Eliphaz, after calamity hits. These friends are so passionate about defending their point of view, defending their God, that they become blind to their friend Job sitting in front of them. Chapter after chapter, they press their case, insisting that Job must have done something wrong to deserve what happened to him. Bildad puts it this way: God's not going to reject a blameless person, nor take the hand of evildoers. Not going to happen. And what he's implying is this: so, what did you do? They urge Job to do a forensic analysis of his life. And later, when that doesn't work, to do a forensic analysis of the life of his ancestors, so as to find sins that would explain why Job's children are now in their graves and boils are on his body. Surely there was something that he or his ancestors did, if not through their actions, then through the evil intent of the heart. But Job has already done this forensic analysis. He has searched his history. Of course, he's not perfect, but he knows, the whole community knows that he hasn't done anything to deserve all this. Or, and I'm sure his friends don't like hearing this, if he deserves this level of misery, everyone deserves this level of misery. Priests and prophets, Father Moses, Mother Teresa, 3 people named Bildad, Zophar, and Eliphaz. Have I made the friends sound terrible? They're not terrible. They're just carried away. Haven't all of us regretted things that we have said or done in an argument, a debate, a defense of some candidate or cause that we believe in? And you might really mean it when you say it, but only because your passion is so focused that you forget who you're talking to. Anyway, even if you do give up on Job's friends, Job doesn't give up on them. I mean, you heard at the end of all this, Job is praying for his friends. But Job tries to stop them from seeing him for who they need him to be by reminding them that he's never swerved from the truth. He's upheld the cause of justice. He has been the widow's protector. He has served as eyes for the blind and feet for the lame. And he has championed the cause of the foreigner in their midst. Like many passionate arguments about politics, religion, and whose fault it is, this conversation with friends goes on, chapter after chapter, and doesn't settle anything. And you can see Job tiring of trying to get his friends to see him, to remember who it is that they're talking to. But then you see from chapter 31 on, Job keeps arguing with his friends, but you can hear it. He's really arguing with God now. And he wants a hearing. Oh, that I knew where to find God, he shouts, that I might come even to his dwelling. I would lay my case before him and fill my mouth with arguments. He wants a hearing because he wants God to explain God's self, especially why God hasn't lived up to God's end of the bargain. And then finally, God responds. And the way God responds is an amazing metaphor. God responds out of the calm center of a chaotic whirlwind. He is in the middle of the storm of chaos in the stillness of its eye. And there is found a pause. And what a gift a pause can be in the middle of chaotic conversations. Yes, sometimes you need to be honest with your emotions so they don't fester. That's right. But it's also right that sometimes emotions need to take a pause. Gain some perspective before saying or doing those things that you later regret. That inmate I told you about, the one serving a life sentence because of a fit of passion, he would have loved to have had that pause. Because what the pause can give you is perspective. Not answers, usually. Not explanations, not resolution, perspective. God takes Job out of the debate and on a tour of creation, showing him creation's many wonders, showing him its amazing beauty despite the suffering that it contains. Hail can destroy crops. Hey, Job, let me show you where the hail is destroyed. It's enormous. Lightning can start a fire. Job, let me show you the massive battery where I store the lightning. I added the word battery in my own paraphrase of the passage. Oh, and Leviathan, that great beast of the sea that everyone is so terrified of, come on, I'll show you a close view. I'll show you its armor, its teeth, the fire that comes out of its nostrils. I mean, it is something else. Hey, Job, this might cheer you up. Let me show you an ostrich that can run faster than almost anything that can eat it. And yet when it's threatened, it puts its head in the ground. Let me show you life beginning, being born. Let me show you life ending. Life, health, so fragile, so beautiful, The poetry is beautiful. Misery needed the poetry of lament because you know how misery is. It needs to be expressed more than it needs to be explained. The same is true with all. How can you explain a world where bad things happen, but life is good? Where suffering and death are part of a life worth living? Where in the end, God's presence is more needed than God's explanations? I love the book of Job so much. But I need to get back to my point, I guess. Passion is a part of why life is so beautiful. Passion can lift us up. It can charge us. It can drive us to achieve. It can draw us to each other. Passion, after all, is what drives Job's friends to visit with him and do the one smart thing they did at the beginning, that is to stay silent, just be there with him. Passion is what drives Job to defend himself. Passion is what drives him to open his heart to God, even though his heart is full of hurt, betrayal, and accusation. But as is true with all good things, passion on its own can be dangerous. Passion for how the world is supposed to be so distorts the friend's view that they lose sight of Job and see only how they need Job to be for their worldview to make sense. And Job's passion for how things are supposed to work distorts his view of God because he only sees the God as he needs God to be for his worldview to work. Their passion needs pause. Now, there's no pause between Job and the friends, but there is pause between Job and God. And found in that pause is perspective. Now, in case I've become too lofty in my rhetoric, let me just tell you a story I heard from a talk Mary Zann gave that you can hear as a Talking Bird podcast. Mary spoke of longtime friends of hers who were married. They were married so long that they had recently celebrated their golden anniversary. But somewhere within those 5 decades, toward the beginning, there were 12 years when the marriage was not strong. And Mary was such good friends with these two that they told her all about it. Then there was a lot of blaming and scorekeeping, resentments that were only growing stronger. Conversations were too easily becoming arguments, and so mostly they just quit talking. Divorce was discussed. But they decided that before they went that far, they should at least give counseling a try. Well, their counselor didn't provide them with answers or settle their scores. And if she provided explanations, the couple doesn't now remember what those explanations were. But what the counselor helped them do was learn to pause. She asked them to do something every single evening, and they agreed to try it. Every evening, they needed to tell each other where they were in regard to these 4 emotions: happiness, fear, anger, and pain. And to my point about poetry, because they were both musicians and singers, she asked them to sing a simple folk song together to end every conversation, to express what can't be just simply put in words. But I want you to think about that part about where they were asked to talk about where they were in relation to happiness, fear, anger, and pain. I mean, isn't that interesting? What a nice balance between being honest about your emotions, but getting some distance from them, taking a pause so as to get perspective on them. They were given space to listen to each other. Maybe hear not only where they were in relation to each other, but in relation to what else was going on in their lives and in their world. As with God and Job, they were helped to be with each other. Now, not all troubled relationships have happy endings, but this one did, and the pauses helped make it so. Now, Job's story has a happy ending of sorts, although you have to know that a life can't be all rosy for someone who has lost so much. But I want you to notice something about how it is with Job, who could at first not see past how life was supposed to be. I want you to notice something that the pause gave to him. At the beginning of the book of Job, Job's sons are named, and his daughters are not named. And when Job loses everything, it's clear that his sons have lost their inheritance. Now, this is before the sons and daughters die in a terrible accident. Now that only sons are named and get inheritances is not unusual for Job's day. It is a patriarchal culture. That's how it's supposed to be. One can excuse Job for not being able to see past that. Except that at the end of the story, there are details to let you know that Job can now see past how it is supposed to be. He and his wife have 10 more children. And what you heard as I read our passage, 7 sons are not named, but his 3 girls are named. And it is said that in Job's eyes, they are the most beautiful women in the world. And we are told that they are given an equal inheritance with their brothers. Wow. Look what can come of perspective that's gained in a pause. Given a wider, better view of God, Job now has a wider, better view in his world and can see his daughters now as equal to his sons. Keep in prayer those whose relationships are troubled or will be troubled because of focused, blinding passion. Keep in prayer those who are so caught up in their worldview that they can only see what is wrong with the people that they oppose and have convinced themselves that they should hate them. Keep in prayer anyone who has been captured by misery and so captured by it that they lose perspective and have lost hope. Keep in prayer yourself for those times when passion needs a pause. And when you pray, ask for what that pause can bring if God is in it. Renewed presence and fresh perspective.
Second Presbyterian, finding direction by following Jesus.